In today's overcrowded marketing landscape, getting noticed has become increasingly challenging. Marketers constantly compete for attention, often resorting to louder, more aggressive tactics in an attempt to stand out. However, this approach frequently misses a fundamental truth about human connection. People don't respond to being shouted at. They respond to being spoken with. This article explores the concept of intimate conversation as a powerful marketing approach. We'll examine how moving away from the typical noisy marketing clutter can help you get noticed in meaningful ways. We'll delve into techniques for creating deeper connections with your ideal prospects and utilize subtle but powerful psychological tools that capture attention in your prospect's mind. The traditional marketing mindset envisions broadcasting a message to the world as loudly as possible, trying to reach as many people as possible. This perspective treats marketing as speaking to a target market as a collective whole, rather than recognizing that markets consist of individuals with unique concerns and desires. When marketers write emails, newsletters, speeches, or copy from this perspective, they describe problems and refer to their audience as a collective, missing opportunities for genuine connection. What if there was a more effective approach? One that creates authentic relationships with prospects and transforms marketing from a shouting match into a meaningful conversation. That's precisely what the power of intimate conversation offers. When most people think about marketing, they envision broadcasting messages as loudly as possible, trying to capture the attention of as many potential customers as they can. This approach treats marketing as speaking to a target market as a collective whole, rather than recognizing that markets consist of individuals with unique concerns and desires. This traditional approach manifests in numerous common marketing practices. For instance, at live events, speakers often begin with phrases like, "Hey, how are you all doing?" This immediately signals that they're addressing the entire audience as a single entity rather than connecting with each individual present. Similarly, sales letters and website copy frequently use language like, "Who else would like to know the secrets of?" or "Thank you for being one of my many satisfied clients." While the latter might seem like positive social proof, it actually diminishes the individual importance of each client. Why do marketers default to this approach? There are two primary reasons. First, it's simply more natural for us to communicate this way. When thinking about an audience as a group, we instinctively use language that addresses them collectively. Second, speaking personally and intimately feels uncomfortable for many people, especially when communicating with multiple individuals simultaneously. Writing a newsletter or article from the perspective of addressing one specific person requires a deliberate shift in communication style that many marketers haven't practiced. The fundamental issue is a lack of deliberate communication. Most marketers haven't consciously developed the skill of intimate conversation, instead defaulting to broad, impersonal messaging that fails to create meaningful connections with their audience. When marketers speak to audiences generically rather than on a personal, intimate level, several negative consequences follow. First, and most critically, the audience immediately disconnects from the message. This disconnection often happens subconsciously. Prospects don't consciously realize they're disengaging, but they fail to resonate with the message at a deeper level because it doesn't feel directed specifically at them. What comes across in impersonal marketing is that you're speaking at or to your audience instead of with them. Imagine sitting across a table from someone having coffee. If you were to speak using typical marketing language, the other person would think you were behaving strangely, shouting generalities rather than engaging in meaningful conversation. The communication feels artificial and forced rather than natural and engaging. The ultimate goal of intimate marketing is to have your audience say, "Wow, I just read your email, website, watched your video, and it felt like you were talking directly to me." When prospects experience this feeling, it signals that you've successfully practiced intimate communication and connected with them as individuals. Without this connection, trust development becomes significantly more difficult. People must connect with you before they can trust you, and without trust, they won't take action. This creates a clear chain reaction. Impersonal communication leads to disconnection, which prevents trust formation, which ultimately blocks the desired response or action. The business impact is substantial: fewer conversions, lower engagement, and reduced customer loyalty. In today's increasingly noisy marketing environment, communicating on a personal and intimate level isn't just a nice-to-have strategy. It's absolutely critical to business success. The ability to cut through the clutter and establish genuine connections with prospects can be the difference between thriving and merely surviving in competitive markets. When discussing intimate conversations in marketing, it's important to clarify what intimate actually means in this context. Some might initially associate the term with private or romantic conversations, but that's not the intention here. According to the dictionary, intimate communication is characterized by or involving warm friendship or personally close or familiar association or feeling. In marketing terms, intimate communication means creating messages that make prospects feel like they're engaging with a close, trustworthy person whom they know and respect. There's a sense of familiarity that naturally builds trust and credibility. This is precisely how we want our ideal prospects to see us, as someone they can relate to and trust, not as a faceless entity shouting marketing messages. The question then becomes, isn't this how we want our ideal prospects to see us? Don't we want to be perceived as a close, trustworthy person that prospects know and respect? When we establish this familiarity, our ability to build trust and credibility skyrockets. And with trust comes influence, engagement, and ultimately conversion. The goal of intimate communication in marketing is to make each person in your audience feel like they're the only one you're speaking to, even when your message reaches thousands or millions. When you achieve this level of connection, your marketing transcends the typical transactional nature of business communication and becomes a meaningful exchange between individuals who understand each other. This approach represents a fundamental shift in marketing philosophy. Rather than seeing marketing as broadcasting to anonymous masses, intimate communication views marketing as a series of one-to-one conversations happening simultaneously. The psychological impact of this shift is profound, creating deeper engagement and stronger relationships with prospects and customers. Creating intimate conversations in marketing requires a fundamental shift in approach. The most essential principle is to imagine you're writing to only one single person. This can be challenging if you've never consciously practiced it before, but it transforms the way you communicate. When you close your eyes and picture your ideal prospect, then write as though you're crafting a private letter directly to that individual. Your language naturally shifts to create more personal connections. The first key principle is to focus on your prospect, not yourself. Avoid using I and self-oriented language whenever possible. There are exceptions, of course, such as when sharing your story to build credibility, but even then, keep the focus primarily on the prospect. Remember that people don't care about you until they like you, and they won't like you if you're constantly talking about yourself. This self-focused approach is a common mistake in marketing. Just visit almost any company website, and you'll notice the front page is dominated by information about the company, what they do, who they are, and why they're supposedly great. Rarely does the content focus on the prospect and their needs, which is a critical error that diminishes connection and engagement. Instead, when referring to your audience, use language that addresses one person directly, you and your. Make the prospect the center of attention. When you visualize speaking to one particular person, your language naturally becomes more intimate and engaging. These subtle distinctions create powerful subconscious connections with your audience. Another important principle is to avoid making general references to your audience as part of a group. For example, saying, if you're one of the 34 million people suffering from diabetes, immediately makes the individual feel like an insignificant part of a massive group. Instead, speak directly to them. If you suffer from diabetes. This immediately captures their attention because it feels personal rather than generic. Though subtle, this distinction creates a significantly stronger connection when practiced consistently. A powerful technique in intimate marketing is keeping your prospects in what can be called the good group. When categorizing people, you want your audience to feel included in the preferred or positive group. This means that when referring to negative behaviors or bad habits, it's better to attribute these to others rather than directly to your prospect. For example, if you're marketing a productivity program saying, if you waste time and never get the important things done, risks making your prospect feel guilty or ashamed. This negative emotion can trigger disengagement as people instinctively resist accepting blame. Instead, try framing it as people that waste time and never create any results. This subtle shift removes direct blame while still allowing prospects to privately recognize themselves in the description if it applies to them. The key principle here is to focus your messaging on the outcomes your prospects want rather than their negative habits or behaviors. This approach maintains connection without triggering defensive reactions that could push them away from your message. The flip side of this technique is to align and parallel yourself with your prospects whenever possible. This creates a sense that you're similar to them, which fosters connection since people naturally prefer to do business with and trust those they perceive as being like themselves. Numerous studies have confirmed this psychological tendency. A particularly effective approach is to use phrases like, "If you're like me, you've probably always wondered if." This instantly aligns your audience with you, especially if you've established yourself as a successful and trusted authority. The prospect sees themselves as similar to you, creating a powerful subconscious connection. These techniques may seem subtle, and they are, but their impact is significant. The power of intimate conversation lies in the conscious use of words and phrases that create connection. When you deliberately craft your marketing messages with these principles in mind, you create a level of engagement that generic marketing approaches simply cannot achieve. The most powerful way to connect with your audience is to speak to one individual person at a time. To implement this approach effectively, close your eyes and picture your ideal prospect or client. Then write your communication as though you're crafting a private letter directly to that person. This visualization exercise helps shift your language patterns in subtle but significant ways that dramatically increase connection. Remember that intimate conversation marketing is about being conscious of your word choices. While the differences between traditional marketing language and intimate conversation may seem subtle, the impact on audience engagement and response is profound. These small shifts in communication create powerful subconscious connections that traditional marketing approaches simply cannot achieve. The practice of intimate conversation in marketing represents a return to the fundamentals of human connection. In an era where consumers are bombarded with thousands of marketing messages daily, the ability to cut through the noise and speak directly to an individual's concerns, desires, and aspirations is invaluable. This approach transforms marketing from an impersonal broadcast into a meaningful exchange between people who understand each other. Implementing these techniques requires deliberate practice and conscious attention to language patterns. Start by reviewing your existing marketing materials, website copy, emails, social media posts, sales letters, and look for opportunities to shift from group-oriented language to individual-focused communication. Pay attention to how often you use I versus you, and whether you're speaking about your audience's outcomes or focusing too much on your own story. As you develop this skill, you'll notice a transformation in how your audience responds to your marketing. The comments, emails, and feedback you receive will increasingly include statements like, "It felt like you were speaking directly to me." When you hear this, you'll know you've successfully harnessed the power of intimate conversation. In today's crowded marketplace, the ability to create genuine connections through intimate conversation isn't just a nice-to-have marketing skill. It's an essential competitive advantage that can transform your business results and create lasting relationships with your ideal customers.